Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down a really powerful technique for handling confrontation. I'm not talking about fighting fire with fire. No, this is something way more effective. It's called Negotiation Jujitsu.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Have you ever been there? You're in a conversation, maybe it's a negotiation, maybe it's just a talk with a family member, and all of a sudden, bam, you feel like you're under attack. Your heart starts pounding, you get all defensive. Yeah, we've all been there. A simple discussion suddenly turns into a fight.
So what happens in that moment? What's our first gut reaction? To fight back, right? They push us, we push back harder. It's just this primal instinct. But the real masters of negotiation, the people who actually control the room, they do the complete opposite. They don't meet force with more force. They redirect it.
So, this master's move, it's what we call the counterintuitive attack. The whole goal isn't to put up a wall and block their force. It's to actually turn their own force back against them. Now, it's going to feel a little weird at first, maybe even unnatural, but trust me, it is so powerful.
The second we feel attacked, our whole focus just shifts, doesn't it? We completely stop thinking about the big picture, about what we actually wanted to achieve in the conversation. Instead, our brain just flips into self-preservation mode. It's pure survival instinct. But here's the problem. In a negotiation, that's a losing strategy. You're not playing to win anymore. You're just trying not to lose.
So how do we actually pull this off? Well, to really understand it, we've got to look at the core concept. And believe it or not, it's built on some really ancient wisdom. This isn't some new fad or a clever trick. We're talking about the time-tested art of deflection.
And that brings us to what we call Negotiation Jujitsu. So what is it? It's a strategy where you neutralize aggression, but you don't do it by putting up a shield. No, you strategically deflect their attack, and you redirect all that negative energy right back into solving the problem together. It's just like the martial art. You're literally using their own force against them.
And this idea has been around for centuries. It's rooted in some deep strategic thought. Just listen to this from Sun Tzu in The Art of War. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. It's brilliant, right? The truest victory, the most complete win, is the one where you didn't even have to fight a head-to-head battle.
Okay, so that's the ancient philosophy. Awesome. But how does that actually work today? In a modern boardroom or a tense sales call, or heck, even in an argument with your family. Well, it all comes down to two steps that are surprisingly simple, but trust me, they're incredibly effective.
And here they are. The entire technique is just two simple moves. First, you acknowledge their emotion, and second, you ask what we call calibrated questions. That's it. That is the 1-2 punch that can completely flip the entire dynamic of a conversation.
So, step one. This is what former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss calls tactical empathy. And listen, this part is absolutely crucial. This is not about agreeing with them at all. It's just about recognizing their perspective and saying it out loud. You're just repeating what you see back to them. He calls this technique labeling. And it can sound as simple as this. You just label the emotion. You say something like, "It seems like you're frustrated," or "It looks like you feel we're not paying attention to you." By just calmly naming the emotion, you acknowledge it, and that instantly takes all the power out of it. It shows them you're listening, and boom, they feel heard.
All right, so once you've labeled their emotion and kind of lowered the temperature in the room, you pivot to step two, calibrated questions. Now, these are open-ended questions that almost always start with what or how. And here's the genius part. Their purpose is to make the other person stop, actually think, and start working to solve your problem for you.
So, for example, instead of just making a statement they can shut down, like, "You can't do that," which just invites a fight, you flip it into a question. You put the burden right back on them. You just ask, "How am I supposed to do that?" See? That simple reframe forces them to stop attacking and start problem solving. You've just redirected all their aggressive energy.
All right, theory is one thing. Let's see how this plays out in the real world, with a classic example from someone who was, an absolute master of this technique. We're going to see how he redirects force in a super high-stakes public setting. So we're talking about the famous political debates between Abraham Lincoln and his rival, Stephen Douglas. And during one of them, Douglas tries to pull a classic hardball move. He goes for direct, personal insult, hoping to just throw Lincoln completely off his game. So Douglas gets up in front of the whole crowd and says, "I am convinced that this man is a perfect hypocrite, that he is in fact two-faced." Now think about it. The normal instinctive response would be to get super defensive, right? To deny it, or maybe fire an insult right back. But Lincoln,
He doesn't do any of that. He just absorbs the attack.
He just pauses for a second, looks out at the crowd, and with this brilliant touch of self-deprecating humor, he says, "Honestly, if I were two-faced, would I be showing you this one?" In one move, he completely disarmed the insult, redirected all that negative energy into laughter, and totally won over the entire crowd. That is negotiation jujitsu.
I mean, Lincoln's mastery just shows you what's possible, right? So the big question is, how can you apply this stuff in your own life? How do you become that master tactician who has this unbreakable tone?
Okay, here's your practical toolkit. First, you acknowledge their frustration, but you never ever validate their hostility. Next, you use those how and what questions to channel their energy. Now this next one, this is a real game changer. You willfully misunderstand their ultimatums as just aspirations. So when they say, "This is my final offer," you hear, "This is what I'd ideally like." It just keeps the whole conversation going. And finally, you completely ignore personal attacks. Just don't engage. Your only goal is to neutralize the aggression so you can actually collaborate. And this quote right here, this perfectly captures the mindset you need for that unbreakable tone. It's about being a master tactician. You're not just a one-trick pony. You refuse to be defined by a single style. Instead, you look at the situation and you choose the perfect weapon for that specific battle. You stop being reactive and you become strategic, flexible, and always in control.
And that's really the question I want to leave you with. Notice it's not if you'll face aggression again, because let's be real, you will. The real question is, how are you going to respond? How will you choose to redirect that force and turn it into your advantage?